I think that sometimes we're in this place of always thinking something's wrong with us or what's wrong with my body. If you can create this space of learning to not act from your emotions, but to allow them to pass, you begin to see bigger results because then it starts to trust that you're going to actually allow it to do what it's supposed to do.
Welcome to Heal, a podcast about the real stories of what it takes to heal. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Marshall, naturopathic physician, published author, and psychedelic integration guide. What does it really take to heal? We sit down for raw, authentic conversations from science to spirit, trauma to transformation. If you want to learn more, go to my website, sarahmarshallnd.com, and sign up for my newsletter, where I share my most cutting-edge new thinking, what I'm seeing right now in the research and in my clinical practice. So you're getting the most up-to-date information, practical tools in your inbox. Check us out, join us, and enjoy the show. I'm pumped, Christine. Thank you for being here.
Me too. Thank you for the invitation.
And from Costa Rica, Pura
Costa
Vida.
Rica. Yes.
So glad to have you. It's just awesome to have you here on Heal. I'm going to take a minute and talk about you while you're sitting here listening.
Okay, great.
You got introduced to me from one of my dearest best friends who I trust implicitly. So I was super pumped and we had the most amazing pre-interview call. I was like, we should be recording this one. I mean, so I just knew we have so much in common. And with your background in holistic transformation, you support women with MS reconnect to their body's innate wisdom to truly heal and their whole internal healing potential. And you've spent 20 years healing your own MS naturally. You've used whole food nutrition, nervous system restoration, spiritual practice, plant medicine, deep self-inquiry, and I'm sure the list goes on of other Eastern traditional, non-traditional, all the things that you've explored, which I'm really excited to talk about today. Particularly one of the things you said is the rabbit holes of going down the healing path, thinking you're doing the right things and not actually making a difference, and where we can actually take a look at the importance of healing from the inside out versus the outside in and how that flips the whole script. So I'm setting you up already for where I want to go with it.
I can't wait.
Stoked to have you here. The work that you do with women, it really bridges science and soul, connecting heart, mind, body, and science. And you have tons of tools. You have an amazing professional background that I think lends you a lot of relatedness, which I'll let you share more about how you got here. And yeah, welcome to Heal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
So the magic question, where do you want to start?
Yeah. Where do you want to start? We could start in so many different places.
I definitely want to get right into this piece about what you see, how the paradigm of healing is shifting, and this healing from the inside out versus the outside in, which I think even naturopaths and integrative medicine functional doctors are all guilty of. And if while you do that, you want to share any of kind of your pertinent background, the work you've done over the last 20 years for yourself, and just kind of pull those pieces together for us, I think that'd be a great place to go.
Great. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, I think that's been so powerful. And I also love that I'm talking to you as a naturopathic doctor about this because this is your work. And for 20 years, I think it's just been a new, like in the last handful of years, that where it's just like this outside in thing, like it's your diet, and then you have all these like markers, biological markers, and you have all these blood tests and you have these results, and it's just like, oh, you have histamine imbalance, and you have these food sensitivities, and in all of these mold sensitivities, and who knows any number of other things, and leaky gut, and then you try to fix the leaky gut, and then you try to fix these things, and then those things may heal. But it was this new idea of like, what if our body is expressing illness because of an internal imbalance? And then that internal imbalance then drives the shift in these markers and your inability to digest nourishment and your sensitivity to light and mold or like all of these other things that then express as a biological data marker via blood results and things like that. This whole idea of like, wow, can we actually, this is where that healing from inside out, not from outside in, And what if we start with the inside first, and then just starting with the inside, then your body changes its expression, and then you heal on your own. And that seems super radical and super nuts. And I think, like, for me, yeah, I spent a long time exploring all of these modalities, and they're all amazing, right? Like, it's just, they're all incredible and have a place in the healing path. But once I started going into my nervous system and into my truth and into my shadows, and I could see, like, with multiple sclerosis specifically, it's a disorder of the nervous system. And even though I had a really traumatic childhood, and, a lot of people have trauma. It's like a very ubiquitous word these days that everybody wants to like stand on, which is fine. Like, it's part of the human condition, I believe. But I always thought, well, I've adjusted to all that. I've had plenty of therapy, and I have a healthy relationship, and I have healthy friendships. And like, I felt like that was been there, done that. But what I didn't know is that all of my childhood past and all of the things that I didn't have, I wasn't equipped to articulate, process, or hold in its place, was actually lodged deep in my body. And without me knowing it, and without me being able to see it or anything, was just kind of hidden. And once, and then I think you get to a certain point where your body just wants to express all these things that it holds down for so long. You just don't have, your body is just like done. And once I started connecting to that in a lot of these different practices and different things that happened in my life, that made it really clear that I had a lot of work to do. And what was interesting, though, too, is that it was revealed to me that not only did I have a lot of work to do to heal a lot of the trauma in childhood, but that I actually was creating a life that kept my nervous system dysregulated. I was creating friendships that keep my nervous system dysregulated. I had this epic food business for 10 years in Boulder. I mean, it was like the dream of a lifetime, and it was incredibly successful. But also, it was all driven from this place of keeping my nervous system dysregulated while I'm trying to down the kale smoothies and like have a hard clasp on my diet and keep my lifestyle incredibly rigid and have like the perfect sleep hygiene and like the perfect mattress and like the perfect breakfast and like the perfect body care routine, go to yoga, keeping all of those things incredibly tight and keeping my life incredibly tight just to keep the expression of my MS like subclinical. You know what I mean? And calling that a success. And then I'll stop so that you can interject. But then I realized as well, not only did I like create a life in service of keeping my nervous system dysregulated, because that's all I knew, right? Like, that's how I was raised. That was the only relationship I had. I didn't even know that I didn't even know that it was within my power to shift that relationship within myself. And then in so doing, that would change my entire health without me doing anything else. I didn't need all of these tests and tinctures and supplements and biomarkers. Like, I just needed to focus on this internal thing, and then the body does its own thing. That ended up being incredibly profound for me. So there's a lot of shadows there, like seeing and recognizing, like, I am responsible for everything I create, and I create everything. So how am I responsible for this dysregulation that I'm not connected to? And what can I do to shift that? And then taking responsibility for those decisions I've made and seeing what doesn't serve me anymore, and then learning to like release all these traumas and create a different relationship with my nervous system. And then suddenly it's like, whoop, then all of a sudden everything shifted in a different way, right? Like, because there's like a lot of like pressure in the mainstream healing path, right? It's like, do this and this tincture, and then come back and see me, and then we're going to get this test, and then you're going to do this, and then take out this diet, and then put this in. It's just like that energy and that vibration. It's like more things to do, more things are wrong with me. And then that energetic frequency also creates stress in the system as well. Like, I'm not doing enough. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? And like, here's another doctor, here's another tincture, here's another pill, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of energy to expend towards healing.
Ditto. My 20-year history. I mean, it's the questions that I have are like, can we start at the end, or do we have to go through some of this to get to the place where then we can see how much the internal is important, right? I'm a novice ish. Novice is maybe not giving myself enough credit, but I'm a amateur studier of Chinese medicine as I weave that into the work I do. I'm actually taking an intensive acupuncture course right now, and I don't practice acupuncture. But what I'm learning from it is all of the ways of thinking about the meridians of the body and the ways of thinking about the organ systems. It's very distinct from how we hold things, even in Western naturopathic medicine. And one of the things that came up just recently for me as I'm learning this is we are learning the Chinese names of every single acupuncture point, and then what is the symbolic story behind each point, let alone the meridian itself. The meridian itself has an entire story to tell, and then there's all these specifics. And almost invariably, every single point name, it might mean little lake, but then it also can be in certain context interpreted as grand ocean. And so there's always this both and that exists in more of the
Mm,
Eastern tradition. Well, I'm with you in that my own healing journey has very much gone from an outside in to eventually that ran its course. And I would call it, it got bankrupt. It wasn't giving me the
yeah,
results anymore.
yeah.
And then I started in on this inside out version that has been a big transformation. And we'll get into the specifics of like, I realize people are like, what are you talking about? What does this even look
Yeah,
like? What does that
right.
actually mean? Right. We'll do that. I promise. I promise. Hang on. But, I started in naturopathic medicine at 25. So I didn't do a whole lot, although my childhood was full of conventional medicine with asthma and mono and chronic lung infections. And so I had lots of steroids and inhalers and all of those kinds of treatments. But then in my early 20s, I'd already found naturopathic medicine and I started to pursue, but it was adrenal tinctures and pills and diet changes and, structural chiropractic care and acupuncture treatments, which acupuncture does work on all levels. But it was still very much like, how do we alter the biochemistry in the body? And the mental emotional piece, spiritual piece was always there. And I definitely pursued it, but it really wasn't until I was 39. So I started this journey really officially at 25. So 14 years later, that is when I went into a deep turning point of paying more attention to the way that my life was being lived. I was a workaholic. I was working 100 hours a week. I was volunteering 30 to 40 hours a week for transformational education. That was part of my 100 hours. It was practice plus that. And what I was noticing in particular was my romantic relationships were shit. And for all of my
Hmm.
success and all of my accomplishment and all of my deep personal work that I had done up till then, and my consciousness and my awareness of language and all of the ontology work and transformational work and healing work, my relationships were like evidence that something was not connected. And that was when I started to embark on a conversation of basically looking down some of the shadows that I had not been willing to confront. And I'll take it out of nuance here into specifics, which is I started to confront aspects of where I had dealt with sexual abuse and sexual trauma that I never would have even used those words. To even say abuse was like, well, I'm not that person. That's not what happened to me. I had empowered context about all of it. And it wasn't to now turn myself into a victim, but if I was never willing to look from that frame of reference and just even consider what if it was sexual abuse, then what would that give me access to heal, to work on, to process? And then that's been the last 6 years. And I think another thing you and I have in common is that's when plant medicine also came into my life, was very much a turning point. And it's now been a both and journey. So part of what I look at with all my clients is like, the way I say it is you've got the physical body and the mental, emotional, spiritual, and they're mirror images of each other. And you can work the problem from either side. And for some people, they just don't have a lot of access to the mental, emotional, spiritual yet. So we do a lot on the physical. But when we do a liver cleanse, their anger gets better. And when we do a kidney diet, they start to feel grounded. And when we work, so but that does eventually run out. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I do, I think that you're right. I feel like maybe this is kind of where we're at in the healing process in like the world in general, whether you're talking about Western medicine or you're talking about alternative treatments, but recognizing that there is like an end of the road at some point in time where those things don't work. And that's one of the reasons why I feel like for me, I always felt like it was like my health was like an onion, right? And it's like, okay, so right now I'm at this doctor and this is their toolkit because, you know better probably even than I that the world of natural healing is vast and it's totally different than Western healing, which is pretty, compartmentalized and structured. But you can go anywhere, you can go all over the world for natural healing modalities, Ayurveda and like Chinese medicine and on and on and on. But so then I would just be like, okay, well, I've exhausted that and that worked, and I'd get to a plateau. And then I'd just be like, okay, now what next? And then there would be like another doctor, another healing modality. They would have something else in their toolkit. And I'd be like, oh, hey, like I've never investigated histamine response. So like, let's go there. And so, yeah, but then every time I'd be like excited and I would make progress and then I would plateau. And it was like, okay, then there's something more. So that kind of led me to my 20-year, my 20-year search and I think all of them were like incredibly valuable. And I learned an incredible amount working with incredible healers and using my own body and my own health as like the barometer of success. But all the same, it didn't feel lasting. It felt fleeting, you know? And yeah, it wasn't until likewise plant medicine. That's the thing that really
So
opened the door to me to
yeah.
the deeper healing.
So I
Yeah.
think we're probably going to end up going there, but before we do,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to talk a bit about time. Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
on one hand, I have Heal exist so that people can actually like start further along down the road than you and I did, that they can learn from our experiences and maybe dive into things that that might have taken us 10 or 15 years to get to, and they could move into it faster. But then there's this other piece which you wrote to me when we were exploring this episode, which is this isn't a process that can be rushed. So tell me more about what that's been like for you.
Yeah. That was a big shift in my awareness of the traditional healing and any sort of like healing that we understand it. That's very much like structured linear process. It's almost like you have this mindset like I'm going to do this 6 week reset or whatever, and then in 6 weeks your body is going to change. And we don't create space of reverence and understanding for the way that our body really wants to heal, in the same way that you can't rush like spring, and you can't rush like how fast it takes to heal. You can't be like, hey, bone, I got to be somewhere in 6 weeks, like heal. And we don't recognize that healing with the nervous system is in tune with the energy of nature and the frequency and vibration of nature. We are nature and celebrating it as it naturally unfolds. And then that creates a healing that's more durable, more lasting, and more authentic because it's just how we're really designed to heal, I believe.
Yeah, I couldn't, I mean, for the sake of agreement, I couldn't agree more. And it has also been something that has come up for me, and I will intertwine it to like the more I've worked with psychedelics, the more I've worked with plant medicine, that's actually been a common theme that comes through the teachings of the plants, is that we are nature and we're of nature and we're connected to nature, and our bodies are nature and they have to live inside of natural law. If you plant an apple seed today, you're not harvesting apples next year. And what it
Yeah.
is to be willing to do the work of, this again goes back to, I think it's more common in the Eastern philosophy and Eastern culture than it is in Western, where everything has to be now and instant gratification or immediate gratification, or I'll put the time and energy in as long as I get results back in 3 months, 6 months, a year. We can kind of wrap our heads around that. I'm always
Yeah.
pushing my
Yeah.
clients to like, okay, we can do a lot in a year, but this is a like 3 to 5 to 7 year journey. And, it depends on how far they want to take it, where they want to go. Can you change the biochemistry of the body in 6 weeks? Yeah, you totally can. You can do IV
Yeah.
therapy and you can do deep
Totally.
detox, and you can actually input things in a drug-like fashion, drug-like as in I'm forcing the body to do something beyond its natural physiology, what it would do in its own timeline. And you can get some pretty remarkable results in short periods of time. But then the question is, where are you a year later? Where are you 10 years later? And what does it mean to heal something once and for all at the root? And like where we started this conversation in childhood trauma is something that comes up for a lot of us because it's not so much that we all have bad parents. They also had their own trauma and they're also dealing with what they're dealing with, but we're very
100%. Yeah.
imprintable at that
Yeah.
age. So our brains are growing and developing, our nervous
Yeah.
systems are saying this is what normal life is. And my nervous system got set to a level of intensity that it just expects is normal. And just now at 45 years old, I'm starting to discover wait, that's not just how life is supposed to be. That's the water I've been swimming in. That there's another way life could be that's
Yeah.
much calmer and more peaceful and like more boring. And boring is still a big challenge for me. I don't like boring. I like intensity. I like intensity all over the place. And only recently has my therapist been like, do you know that that's a coping strategy? And I was like, what? What do you mean that's a coping strategy? You know, like this is who
Yeah.
I am. But even deeper than that, when you deal with nature and natural laws, it's multi-generational. And so we go back, I've gone back into some aspects of my childhood, but that doesn't always explain it all. And this might be a little mind bending for some people, but what I've been learning, particularly from the Shipibo and the Amazon, is most of what we carry and deal with is multi-generational trauma. It is handed down from at least 3, if not 7 generations, and maybe even then some. And in the last, it's hard to know where to draw the line with the patriarchy, but the last 2,000 years, the way our Western culture is developed has been systematically removing the healers, coping strategies, and mechanisms that we used to have in place to help us heal and restore whenever those traumas would happen. So we just have been accumulating ancestral trauma for at least about 30, if not 60 or 70 generations that has not had anywhere to go. And part of the world we're living in is it's so intense in our bodies from World War II and the Holocaust back to World War I, back to, coming across the ocean from Europe and leaving everything we ever knew behind, immigration. I mean, that's my ancestral history. That's my background, or wherever it is people came from and what we've been living in for at least 500 to 1500 years back is literally in our nervous systems and is part of why we have the intensity of disease that's happening right now, for instance.
Totally. For instance, well, you said so many really great things there. And I think like that whole idea of pushing, that's like a Western mental construct. And so, yeah, it can make us feel uncomfortable. I often joke about being in like type A recovery and that like but that goes back to the nervous system. Like I was very accustomed to pushing and pushing and pushing, and like that was my natural state of being, and I thought like I took great pride in like how ambitious I was, how determined I was, how fast I did things, like chop chop, and I loved that about myself, and I also was very agitated by anything that was slower. I was just like, oh, that actually rubbed me the wrong way.
I figured out as a New Yorker,
That's
I
boring.
talked fast, I walked fast, I did everything fast. Like my sister
Yeah.
would say, you get more done before 8 a.m. in the morning than I sometimes do in the entire day. But like, this is not healthy for me.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And so I think it's like pulling that apart and recognizing that that's not how humans are actually designed to live and be. Like if we are nature, we are from nature, and our energetic vibration is from the natural world. And we should be moving at the pace of nature. And that might seem really crazy to a lot of people, like you just said, but it is true. In a lot of ways, it's more beautiful, right? Because then you have time to really appreciate things and truly take things in and truly live life and be in life and be in all of these experiences that life brings you. But then, even wrapping around to this whole idea of generational trauma, I think that this is so new to our understanding. And this is why I think like plant kingdoms are coming for us and are more and more available outside of like these small traditional cultures, and that they are allowing their consciousness to be spread around the world because they are recognizing that we are at this tipping point in recognizing that the old way of doing things, the patriarchal way, the highly linear, highly structured, very mentally driven ways are no longer working. They just have this, they're just not. And I feel like I see generational trauma happen in real time with, let's say, I mean, I raised my own children and I wanted to raise my own. Thankfully, they've made it through my raising of them. They're in their 20s. But then I see other families, and there's no judgment. This is just real. But I see in real time how, like, I know for me, because I never had any emotional regulation. That was never even a word, like, in my vocabulary. Like, I didn't even understand what emotional regulation or even like the ability to hold all that is and like the capacity for that. And so I see how my type A and my desire to escape my childhood was passed down probably traumatically to my own children. And mom doesn't have time, mom's abandoning me, mom's always at work, or whatever story they have. And I'm sure one day they'll come to me with a whole laundry list of things. um like unintentionally, unknowingly, I passed that to them. Like, no crying, whining or complaining. That was like the hallmark thing. That's what mom says, like, don't do that, don't bring me that. And I'm not proud of that, but that's real, right? um so I see how unintentionally we take those things from our parents. And like one of the things is like, oh, you're just like your mommy, you're just like your dad. And like how it's the bane of our existence for some to say that. But then inevitably it ends up being true, in certain subtle and important ways, that we do pass these things on intentionally or unintentionally through the generations. And so when you start to understand trauma from that perspective, like how that really happens, it's easy to see how that ends up being a fixture through each successive
Yeah.
generation.
I mean, I recently did a master plant healing diet with my teacher last year and spent a month in the jungle. It's always tricky about sharing the things that come through, but a couple of the pieces that I think is worth mentioning is like, I don't hold the visions of my psychedelic ceremonies as fact, like that this is like absolutely, I don't know. We're walking into worlds that is it metaphor? Did the plants bring that to me simply for my own teaching and healing to get something about it? Or is that literally what exactly happened? I don't know. But I definitely had some very concrete connections of the amount of fear from physical, sexual, and emotional abuse that ran through many generations back of the women in particular in my family, but also the men. There's just been certain themes that it became so clear. And in a way, it brought me a lot of self-compassion that the anxiety that I had in my teens and 20s, that quite frankly, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Like, what, my life looks good. I'm doing the right things. I'm a successful student. I'm a successful, whatever. And it was like the degree of anxiety that I walked around with, and I can look from the naturopathic perspective. I had blood sugar issues up the wazoo. My adrenals were already smoked by the time I was 15, 16 years old. I'd been inundated with steroids and antibiotics as a kid. My diet was not a match for what my metabolic type needed. I'm a meat and fat and protein girl, and I was vegetarian for the first 25 years of my life. So like I just learned that over time,
Yeah.
right? Like my best diet is carnivore or some version of paleo when I can, hang out in that space. And that's not necessarily true for everyone, but that's what I got to. So I can see the biochemical components, blood sugar imbalances, but there was this spiritual thing that was going on as well where I was very empathetic, and I still am. And I was very porous to my outside environment. Like, your emotions were my emotions. I didn't have any idea how to navigate the difference between your upset and my upset. And then, especially if your upset is directed at me, double down. That was like the worst. I had not only completely experienced your upset inside my own body, but then I was to blame with shame and at fault for all of it and had to fix it and alleviate as fast as possible. Welcome to codependency. And I had no clue that that was running in my life until my mid 30s. And I can see now, mom, grandmother, great grandmother, my dad's lineage, his parents, all the way through. And those were some of the lessons the plants really showed me, how this wasn't just my fault, how I could actually relate to it in a much more compassionate way. through all of that. And I'm
Yes.
not even necessarily saying I'm an advocate that I think everybody should work with psychedelics and plant medicine, but the teachings that these medicines have brought us, we can make available to everyone. We can work with other tools. That's what the next place I want to go with you is, what are some of those tools? What are the things that you have found have made a difference for the internal healing? That's something that somebody could go begin to research and explore for themselves.
Yeah, I love how you shared all of that. And yeah, for sure. I also recognize that, not everybody is in a place to undergo a psychedelic journey. And they don't necessarily have the support network and the foundation to be able to integrate that properly. And integration, as you and I both know, is how you take these symbols, these messages, whatever it is that the spirits bring you, and how do you integrate that and enact change in your own life in a way that is beneficial for you and how you move through the world. And I recognize that not everybody's going to do that. That's not everybody's called to that work. But I do think it's really important I, I think one of the reasons why is because of fear, right? People are too afraid to, like, oh, I don't want to go there. Like, wow, that's so scary. Like, that's the scariest thing I could ever imagine. And that kind of touches back even in the fear that you were talking about and that was underlying. And like, I think fear is a human condition. It is definitely something that keeps us safe. And a healthy dose of fear is an important, survival mechanism. But when fear overrides our truth and we live from a place of fear rather than truth, then I think things change a great deal. And so I think to answer your question, it's like this was my thing too, is like was coming into my truth. And I thought that I was living from my truth. I mean, I lived the life of my dreams, I was very proud of the life that I had. And I still am. It was like it worked for me and it was absolutely beautiful as long as I had it. But I also recognize that I wasn't living with authenticity. And so I think it's a matter for the average person of recognizing that like there's so much more to life than the linear path and the mental constructs that society imposes upon us as like a life well lived. Like you like go to school, you go to college, you get the career, you get married, you get the house, you have the kids, you send them to college, you get like the second home and you get the fancy vacations, and then your kids get married and then they have grandchildren. And it's like that's pretty linear actually. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it misses the richness and the depth of the life that we're supposed to live and the experiences that we're supposed to integrate that life brings us if we're not afraid and if we're open and available to this whole other world that is knocking at our door, asking us to live more deeply, more richly. And I think it's a matter of the fear thing and getting around that and recognizing how much fear really does in so many different ways impede us, and that we can face our fears and start to live more authentically. And there's so many different pathways into that. But I think maybe just sitting with this idea of like, how much has fear robbed you of a richer life? Fear of like changing your relationships, fear of changing your job, fear of making a friend upset, fear of making your mother mad, fear of like your neighbor being mad that you didn't bring in the trash on time. But like, how does fear, while it's a healthy and important aspect of our being, how much does that actually override your ability to live in the fullness of? And then when you're able to sit deeply with yourself and take a full accounting of the ways in which fear impedes your ability to live fully, I would suggest then you're opening the door to a greater healing path and a richer life, one that's more authentic to you as opposed to being shaped by the fears and letting those be the things that shape the decisions that you make about what vacation to take or what to bring for Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I mean? So I think maybe it's about addressing like how much fear really does hold us back.
Yeah, I would definitely say that.
And then
Yeah, go
also,
ahead. No, keep going.
well, no, I was just going to say that then there's like the energetic vibration of fear, right? Like then you have these cultural fears, even like right now in society, like there's so many fears. You look at the pandemic and like they brought all of this fear into everybody, and then it becomes an energetic vibration that overlays society. And then, it's in the news cycle and everybody has something to be outraged about. The outrage is fear, right? And then we're feeding into this energetic vibration that is not a match for how the human body wants to express itself in this lifetime.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, what I ran up against once I even started to recognize how much fear was there, which I still had no idea until I did some deeper work, but just trying to not be afraid, I had no access. Just telling myself, the only place I could look really was in my three-dimensional Newtonian life, and like then I just make myself even more wrong because I would be like, well, there's nothing wrong with your life. You have everything you need. Why are you feeling this way? So one of the things that started to break it open for me, and this is fairly recent, I mean, honestly, it's been the last just couple years I've started to really wrestle with this, is one of those like hardcore truths of, what heal is all about is asking the questions, what does it take to heal? What is the fundamental blueprints that exist as like laws of physics, even if it's quantum mechanics, that exist inside of our world, that has our bodies restore themselves and has us heal at all levels. And I think what we've been talking about today is that just dealing with that physical level, the biochemical level, will only take people so far, no matter what intervention you're using, natural, alternative, conventional. But what I started to come to is like the fundamental truth that love is the ultimate life force healing energy that there is. And so anywhere I could bring love as a healer, I could bring love as a naturopath, I could bring my patients to a different experience of love, loving themselves, anything that would accentuate, cultivate, add, bring. I mean, I had one client where there was very little she had access to be able to change about her life. She was taking care of a mother who had an illness. She was dealing with her own illness. She was working full time. Her life was packed. She got a kitten, and at one level, bringing another responsibility into her life was like the worst idea ever. But what that kitten brought in was just a beaming little soft fluff ball of cute love. And it made a huge difference, more than all the green smoothies and all the supplements and all of the saunas and all of the other things that may have been in her prescription. And that was a big turning point for me. The other piece that's come up big time is, and this goes back to nervous system regulation, is I truly believe, and I think most of the research backs this up, when you deal with like vagus nerve system function, the body literally will not heal and repair itself if it's under threat of any kind, even if it's a perceived threat. So you have to be in an experience of safety. And I think that's kind of part of the other half of this conversation. So we start to look at and identify how much fear is holding us back, where it's stopping us. But then it's like, for me, I didn't know what to do about that. The more I focused on the fear, the more fear was there. And I started to shift my attention towards, am I safe? Do I feel safe? What does it mean to be safe? How would I experience safety? What do I need to be safe? And to give myself, as the like successful fill in the blank, whoever I thought egotistically I was, that it was okay for me to be having these conversations like with people very close to me, to actually be able to say like, here's what I would need from you. I didn't actually tell them, here's what I need from you to feel safe, because there's some interesting trigger that comes up for people when you actually address it that way. But I would still get to the root of it for myself and say, would you be willing to do this? Could you do this for me? Could you say it in that way? I just need you to tell me everything's going to be okay and you love me. Would you just remind me that I'm important to you? Like, there was just certain things that started to shift, and I could feel it change in my nervous system, where I would either be in anxiety and stress or I would be in safety. And then now I've started to learn some of the tools that, when you're relational, when you want to connect, when you're playful, when you're more willing to joke around, that is all evidence that your nervous system is in that safe place. Now, some of you guys out there use joking as a strategy to deal with uncomfortable emotions. You got to know if that's your
Yeah,
jam, right?
yeah, yes, exactly.
But like there is this
100%.
experience of playfulness and ease and creativity and wanting to connect with people, wanting to be around them. For me, I know the tell is if I'm talking and I'm creating physical contact, that is a huge amount of safety. You know, a lot of my trauma issues was around physical contact. And so when I'm nervous, I pull back. And so when I'm leaning in and I'm putting my hand on somebody's arm and I want to actually connect with them, I'm like, that I know my nervous system is in that space of safety. And you literally need to live there for your body's cells to heal and restore itself.
For sure. Wow, I love what you just said because I think like so one of the things that I've been personally undergoing my personal nervous system restoration is like learning from these healers here where I am in these two healers that I've been working with for a while. And that is this creating this container um, that holds you and your nervous system. And there's some quantum mechanics that go into that. There's a lot of limbic resonance and there's a lot of witnessing and observing. And I think when you're in co-regulation and limbic resonance and you're working in this space that your nervous system begins to trust and feel safe, then it begins to respond. Because I think that sometimes we're in this place of like, always thinking something's wrong with us or what's wrong with my body and you're using negative language and like and then your body isn't trusting you because it's trying to tell you something and then you're just constantly disregarding those things and like there's something wrong with me and all of that. But if you can create this space of learning to hold your emotions, learning to not act from your emotions, but to allow them to pass, to build the capacity to hold them without creating stories. And then your nervous system begins to trust you. And then you begin to see bigger results because then it starts to trust that you're going to actually allow it to do what it's supposed to do and not rush in to like create a story and make change and act from fear and all of these other things.
It's definitely been one of the biggest things that I have gotten, particularly in the last year, but the last couple years of work that I've been doing for myself is just feeling my emotions and letting myself feel and to not
Yeah.
get caught up in why am I feeling this right now? Why is this emotion coming up? And I don't know if it's true, but the idea that I'm doing work of ancestral healing actually helps because, like, if I wake up really sad one day and I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe this is just from 1910. Maybe this was before my time. Maybe this is just a little bubble of sadness that needs to come forward. And I don't
Yeah.
self identify with it nearly as much, but I don't ignore it either. I let myself feel the sadness, feel whatever it
Yeah.
is as like, you don't want to hold okay if you're going to vomit you don't want to hold that in either, right? Like if
Yeah.
it's like you want to let your body let go of what it wants to let go of, and that piece you're talking about of building trust with your body. I mean, I've talked about this a lot on Heal, but I'm a huge proponent that a big aspect of healing is to actually examine and create a partnership with your body. Like if your body was a member of your family, what would your relationship be like? Do you even talk? Do you have any idea what its needs and wants are versus your needs and wants? Are you working in partnership together to get through this life, you know? And many people honestly know more about how to take care of their car. And if their car starts to rattle or if their car makes a little noise, they're all over it. They take care of it immediately. But then their body, they'll put up with stuff for a decade before that ever even happens. So as we start to kind of wrap things up, because I'm clear I could spend the entire day forever talking to you and we could do this for a very long time, but I want to just kind of bring things
Yeah.
in. Can you bring us back to how this is specifically shown up for you with the MS, with what your body deals with from that kind of disease context? How weave that together a little bit for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think like that trust and that everything I like try to think about like my nervous system like a newborn baby, like full of wonder and love and curiosity. You know, you're holding an infant and you're just like, I don't know what that means. And I don't know, but you're not angry at it. You're just full of like, let's figure this out, and I love you. And how can I help you feel better? In doing all of this work, the plant medicine, the nervous system restoration, and that's not just trauma release, but also reforming my relationship with like how I build a life to keep my system dysregulated. You know, I could do all the releasing I want, but if I keep the same patterns of relationships and work life balance and all those things, and it doesn't really matter all of the ancestral work I do, I just keep on like re injuring myself. But once I started bringing all of this together, then suddenly, my gosh, like the gentleness at which our nervous system really wants to be held, then suddenly, like I would have this, I think one of the most consistent things that I had for like, oh my gosh, 30 years, and I'm not even exaggerating, was insomnia. And like I've done everything. And I sleep through the night, like every single night. Like I sleep, like it is unbelievable, like how well I sleep. MS just like completely gone. But if I get like a little thing, then I can look and I know really clearly what my nervous system is trying to tell me and where I'm out of balance. Nourishment. Like I would, even though I'm a chef and I have food restaurants, I also, had a really tight lifestyle and really tight diet. But now it's like my body is receiving nourishment the way your body is supposed to receive nourishment. My food, I can eat so much more food. Like I would say I'm allergic to this and this and this and this. And that's just how tight I keep my diet so I can keep my MS in check. Now I don't have any of that. Now, of course, I still like honor myself and eat well, but like I'm not afraid of food. I'm not
Yeah, it's the
afraid. I can
same for
eat
me.
two.
Yep.
Yeah, I can eat two eggs every day. And I like 20 years without eating. And look, I look at eggs and break into hives, you know? And so it's amazing, like my body is able to fully like take in the nourishment and rest. Like I never rested because I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't sleep because I never rested. But now that I have a different relationship with these, and um, now my body's like, oh, thank God, now we can finally like sleep and we can finally digest. And just even those two things alone are life changing.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah.
And then not
Oh
living
my
in like the
God.
fear, you know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the tough part is like some of the elimination diets and some of the restriction, like there's a level of like you got to stop putting the stuff in order to help the body calm down, but it can easily get spun into more fear, more control, more tightening down, which generically in autoimmune disease is a huge issue. That's a whole nother podcast we have to do of like the personality type of autoimmune disease and how so many
Yes.
people, and it's 80% women now, 20% men that have autoimmune disease. And it has to do with a lot of type A hyperrigidity, control mechanisms. We're the spreadsheet queens. Everything's very organized. I's are dotted, T's are
Yeah.
crossed. Like
Wow. Yeah.
we are running empires. And
Yes.
our immune systems are completely literally attacking ourselves in the process. And like it's very
Yeah.
interesting because
Yes.
I did not manifest an autoimmune disease. I'm certain I would have if I hadn't had divine intervention send me to naturopathic school at 25. It was the perfect recipe to end up with an autoimmune disease in my 30s. And I cut it off at the pass because of the work that I started doing. But yeah, it's really, really important that I love this whole conversation, the outside in to the inside out, the work that you've done,
Yeah.
how parallels so much of what I've discovered. And you're just an absolute joy, such a warm
Thank
wealth
you.
of knowledge and kindness. Some of the things you said, my whole body tingled and like kind of welled up with emotions. And so I just so appreciate your authenticity, your time, and
Thank you.
God, the work
Thank
that
you.
you've
I
done
appreciate
to bring
you.
it to others.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I look forward to us having another conversation.
Absolutely. All right, Christine,
Yeah.
until we get to do it
Thank you.
again,
And
thank you
until we
so
get to do
much.
it
And thanks for being
again.
on Heal.
You're welcome. Yeah. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you for being here. This conversation is your invitation to remember that healing can be messy, hard work, and also beautiful. Stay connected. Join my newsletter at sarahmarshallnd.com or through the link in the show notes. Until next time, keep asking the questions that matter, and you will find your own path to healing. And of course, a special thanks to my extraordinary and generous guests, my producer, Joshua Watherston, video editing by Nellie Dawson, artistic graphical design by Amy Pruitt, and music by Roddy Nickpour. And as always, thank you for being here.